Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today I thought we could talk about neutral density filters and how they apply to both photography and video when we need to limit the amount of light that comes into our camera. And specifically, I wanted to discuss the new Freewell K2 magnetic neutral density system. I guess that's what they're calling it, yeah. Magnetic filter system. Now, Freewell has been making these types of filters for years, and I've got one of their basic screw-on mounts. This is an 82 millimeter. And then they also have a smaller magnetic mount, similar to this one, that came out a couple years ago. But this is their latest release, and it allows you to stack filters if you want to use more than one filter at a time. So like right here, I've got the neutral density on the front, and then you have a mist filter here. So you can work it all in without having to screw another filter on the front of your lens, which then can bring in the possibility of vignetting. So if I'm gonna cut straight to it, if you're looking for a system that's a step up from just these screw-on mounts, jump over to the Indiegogo link that I'll put below in the description and pick one of these up. It's a 30% off deal, I believe, right now. This thing is built like a tank, and they're calling it future-proof since you can use multiple filters within the system. And you've got NDs that go from a 1 to 5 and then a 6 to 9. You can flip them around. You've got a circular polarizer on here as well. All right, if you want to hang around, we'll take a deeper look at this piece of gear, and we'll talk about a couple scenarios where you might find it useful to get the shots that you're wanting based off of your creative direction for that shoot. All right, so let's take a look at this piece of gear. It is as I mentioned before, it's a magnetic style ND filter where you have kind of a base that you put onto your lens. Just let this out of the way. And so you start with a mounting ring that you put on your lens. Here, I'll take this off. This is an 82 millimeter. This is the 24 to 70 f2.8. And so you start with the 82 millimeter ring, and we'll screw this on. Just like so. And on the actual mount here, you've got an area where it mounts to that ring, and you use these two buttons on the edges to pinch those buttons, and then they lock onto it. And you can still rotate when you first put it on, and then you've got these little adjustment tabs here that you can tighten it down onto your lens. And I've got this other filter in here showing off how you can add multiple filters to this. There's what they call the K2 Island, is what they call it, where you can flip this open and slide these filters in behind the neutral density, which gives you all kinds of creative options where you can use something like this glow mist, or actually this is a snow mist here, filter if you want to soften the highlights in an image. They also sent me what they have is a gold streak here. If you want to you'll use that to get like golden anamorphic flares, and then something for your landscape type work. I've got a graduated neutral density. So what this will do is, see if you can, it's kind of hard to see in here, but you can see it right over there, my face here. So what this would do is you would slide this in to the filter here, and then this would darken, say, like a bright sky if you were shooting landscapes, that type of thing. So that way you can capture everything in camera and not rely on post as much as you might without something like this. So all these come in nice leather pouches, the smaller ones for those other smaller filters. The actual case that this comes in, nice leather case, opens up, so you've got different step-up rings or step-down rings all the way from, what is this? This is 67 up to 82, I believe. Yeah, 72 and a 77. So 67 up to 82 in here. Right here I've got the 1 to 5 neutral density and polarizer. You flip it over and it becomes a polarizer. You also get the 6 to 9 neutral density as well, which then flips over, I believe, and gives you a ND 32 on that one, which will really darken things up. super nice, handy. It might look like a lot. I mean, it is kind of a bulky system, but you can, it's pretty neat once you loosen these up. So these tabs kind of hold it into place and keep it from coming off of your lens by accident. But you push those in, you can pull it off. It comes with like a back cover and then a magnetic front cover. So you can actually, I mean, you can just toss this in your bag and kind of see the form factor. And it's, you know, if you're not using the case and everything, this takes up a lot less space in your bag. And if you know kind of the environment you're going to photograph in and know that, hey, I'm just gonna need the 1 to 5 stop ND, you can just put it in your kit just like this, and it's doesn't take up as much room. But as I mentioned kind of at the beginning, this is something a lot more substantial than just, see where you can see this, just your kind of standard screw-on ND filter. So this one just kind of screws on to your lens. If you have smaller lenses than 82, then you would get like a step down ring, like comes in this case here. So if you're doing your run and gun type work, I would probably recommend just having this type of ND for photo, video, whatever you're doing outdoors. But if you're looking for something a little more substantial, like if you're blocked off on a tripod or you're, you know, got more of a rig going and just short of probably what a matte box would bring when you have the big slide in ND filters, that is where I think this sits, in a nice little sweet spot there. Because it is built like a tank, and once you put it on your lens, it's there, and it looks pretty impressive. And then having that option to work in additional filters without screwing them onto the front, that sets this apart from what they did before. And then the actual size of this filter would keep you from getting any kind of vignetting on your wide angle lenses as well. So let's jump just real quick. I thought I would show like a use case scenario where you would need an ND filter. So in going back to just the basic exposure triangle here, where you've got your shutter, your aperture, and your ISO, which all three of these variables work in with each other to create an exposure based off of what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to set an aperture at a certain level, it's going to affect these other two variables as well to create, well, to give you the opportunity to work with a certain aperture based off of what the scene is. So in my case, I was trying to get a slower shutter speed because I wanted to soften the water in the river and get that kind of nice dreamy type look. And I went out purposefully at midday, the worst time of day to go out and do something like this. And when I got there, set up my camera, and knowing that I wanted something around a second on my shutter speed to soften that water, you know, I had to stop my lens all the way down to like f22 or so, and it still was not enough to get close to a second shutter speed to soften that water. So what I did is I used the ND, and I had to use the actual, it was the 6 to 9 ND filter that I had to use to get it dark enough to get that effect of the smooth water. So I think it was probably around the 7 in that area. Another nice thing while we're talking about it, it's got hard stops on it. So it'll stop and you can rotate it around. It'll hit on the 1 and then hit on the 5. There's a sweet spot when using these variable NDs, and if you over rotate it, you can start to get these weird kind of X type patterns in your lens, and that's not good. So they put these hard stops here so you know kind of where you are on this at, you know, at all times. And most of the time I'm looking through the camera and rotating the neutral density to where I get it dark enough, and then I can look and see where it is on here. But as I said, this will stop me from going too far. Another use case that would be outside of kind of like that river case would be when you're shooting video and you want that nice shallow depth of field. So on this lens it would be f2.8, and the same location, what I did is I kept the neutral density on the front of my lens and acted like, you know, if I was going to do a talking head piece out there by the river and wanted that shallow depth of field, I had to have a neutral density to maintain that 2.8 f-stop while shooting 24 frames a second and using the 180-degree rule, shutter rule, which means I'm at a 50th of a second. So in that case, I am stuck at 1/50th of a second, and the only other way to adjust my camera is to have that ND on the front of it and get the light at a level to where I'm not overexposed at that shutter speed. So that's another use case of where you're restricting yourself based off of a creative decision, and it takes a tool like this ND filter to make that manageable for your camera. One other case that I don't have a visual example of, but if you've ever tried to use strobes outdoors, you know then that you are, and you're not using high-speed sync, you are then restricted by your shutter speed, because your maximum sync on a lot of these strobes is around a 200th or 250th of a second. So then that sets your shutter at a certain level. And if it's super bright outside and you're shooting at a 200th of a second, you're gonna have to close your lens down based off of a lot of light coming in. So what you have to do is use a ND filter, put that on there, set your shutter, and then open your lens to where you want it, like 2.8 if you want that super shallow depth of field. And this gives you that ability to do that as well. So those are just right out off the top of my head, 3 use cases where an ND filter comes into play. Especially video, it's great to have, this is a must when you go out and capture both photos and videos. Anyway, I just thought this was a really great product. Wanted to jump on here real quick. Thank the folks at Freewell for sending these over, and let y'all know about the Indiegogo campaign that's going on, because you can get these at 30% off currently. And I think that's a great deal for what you're getting. So if you feel like this video is worthy, please hit that thumbs up down there. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, hit that subscribe button down below. You can also find me on social media at QuantzPhoto on Instagram and Twitter. Y'all please stay safe and healthy out there, and I will see y'all in the next one.